These two are these are the two power standards that we chose, correct?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep, at the standards and alignment.
Yes.
And then you guys did have one supporting standard.
Yes.
So what I did is I kind of broke the standard into the three disciplinary core idea, the disciplinary cross-cutting and science center practices,
Mhm.
and then that's those evidence statements, so that we can look more in detail what they want specifically from each.
Okay.
And then the clarification statement might answer what you just said. Examples of patterns could include that animals need to take in food, but plants do not. Different kinds of food needed by different types of animals, and the requirement of plants to have light, and that all living things need water. So they are comparing and contrasting animals, but the patterns we want them to see is that all animals need food, but it might be different kinds. Plants do not.
Right.
The different kinds of food needed by different types of animals, and probably that'll kind of talk about due to where they live and that kind of thing. And then plants need to have light, and all living things need water. So,
So the other thing is like the plants is really being focused on in our trees and weather unit.
okay, which you do all through the year, right?
Right. And then the animals piece is being focused on here, obviously.
And I guess if you look at the disciplinary core, it also brings in that plants because it talks about how the animals obtain
Their
their
food
food
from
from
the
the plants.
Yeah. So we almost need to incorporate both of those into this.
Mm-hmm. And then your other one, yes, your one, living things need water, air, and resources from land. So I think so you're comparing and contrasting all those different animals, one, to see that they eat different foods, and two, that they all need water and air, but the resources from the land is different. You know, like a worm needs something different than a snail.
Right. But what's
Fish.
interesting is that they're not comparing animal to animals.
Oh, they're
Like
not?
we're not comparing snails to worms. We're comparing
Snails to snails.
snails to snails.
And is
So-
it because they live in different environments, so they need different land resources, even though they're the same type?
Well, for snails, no, because we don't use land snails.
They just need
They're
water
just both
snails.
water snails. So then we just talk about the differences in between those. So
I would take that. We could take that step out to alleviate some time
mhm.
to cover some of that other stuff.
But yeah, so I think then it would be a matter of do we do a little bit, because even like isopods and pillbugs and sow-bugs, there's
There's
such little differences between them.
So maybe going away from the kit just a little bit and compare and contrast
The four
Yeah.
animals. Yeah. Goldfish and guppies, and maybe that's the way, like you start with goldfish and guppies because those two are different. So we
Yeah.
could really look at those two and the earthworms and redworms ish. And then move
Definitely.
into the others and then compare across all four.
And that may be good too, because then with the goldfish and guppies, even though they look very similar, they are different, and then they'll understand from that point. Redworms and worms look the same, but I know they're different as guppies and goldfishes were. So that would be a good, starting place for that. So the main takeaways are,
Then we would just learn about isopods
mm-hmm,
and we would just learn about
snails.
snails.
Maybe-
Because honestly, what we learn about snails is mainly land snails
right.
to begin with. I mean, just overall. So if it could be like 2 weeks of goldfish, 2 weeks of worms, 1 of isopods, and 1 of snails, and then we would have time to compare and really get into what the standards are.
Yeah, because really your main takeaways are that living things need water, air, and resources. Plants are a living thing, but on top of those, they also need sunlight.
With like living and non-living.
Mm-hmm.
But would it really be better to end with that? Because we can build upon the evidence that living and does that make sense?
Yeah.
That because that would make sense naturally is that we would get them because we're
Yes.
I am building in a lesson with gummy worms and earthworms and like comparing those two things. And so then
Yeah. Because
obviously that's very superficial, but
they're
they're kindergartners and it's something memorable that they'll be able to connect with. And so maybe then at the end is when we would get into living and non-living and the needs of those.
Yeah. See, that's what I would do. Usually, like with the vocabulary words, I never front load it. I always do it last after they have something tangible. So I would, yes, give living and non-living after they have tangible experiences where they can really say, oh, I did this and that was non-living. I did this and it was living. So yeah, in my mind, I always put that after the experiences. So
Which is not
whether it's
how-
at the very, very end or if it's after an investigation where your focus was living and non-living, somewhere where they have their own experiences now to connect it to.
Okay.
And then I'm trying to see what your supporting standard words. Okay, and then the one that was just supporting, so it wasn't a power, is getting to
Changing.
how
Yeah.
plants and animals change their environment. But do they include investigations, or is that something we would have to add to meet the standard that plants and animals change the environment?
Well,
Is
if
that
we
in
did like with the worms, if we did the composting piece.
Mm-hmm.
Because then if you started composting here
Mm-hmm.
and then by the time you got to here we would have some actual,
Oh yeah,
do you know what I mean? Because normally like
yeah.
we did it once last year, we started it and then you like the unit was over, we did farm, we
Indeed.
moved on. So if we did that in the very beginning and then kind of started, we would be able to reap the benefits of that and see that.
one is this one.
It's interesting. And with the earthworms today, we talked a lot about how actually that Bob and Otto book that's up there
Oh yeah.
is great because it's about a caterpillar and a worm, and
Oh.
they're friends. And Bob wants to climb the tree, but Otto wants to stay in the ground. So he digs and digs and digs, and the caterpillar eats and eats and eats the leaves. Then he turns into a butterfly. So then Otto gets sad because now he can't fly. And then Bob explains to him, I needed you to build the tunnel so the water could get to the roots that would grow the tree, that would get the leaves that I could eat and then turn into a butterfly. And that's why we're friends. So it was great.
I
And
love
they
that
were
cycle
able
of
to
energy.
they were able to make those connections. So that was a
Awesome.
great resource for that. But with snails, we talked a lot about how they clean things in the pond. So we had that like impact on environment. Isopods, didn't really get there.
I know it's not in the book, but I wonder if we looked up to the purpose of the land snail, because that's what they're more familiar with, and the
Mhm.
worms on land, and that comparison.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're not
Mhm.
digging holes, so they have another role.
Yeah. This is how we go next.
No.
Sketch on. So then, yeah, the isopods, and one big heavy hitter for them, especially this class this year, is like predators and protection. So like what adaptations do their bodies
Mhm.
have that help them survive?
And that's a focus of your students.
Yeah. Oh
Um,
yeah. Which that was last year too. Like,
Well, one, that might kind of go with the change of their environment. And two, resources from the land, because if they're talking about habitat to protect
Mhm,
themselves from
mhm,
predator and
mhm.
prey, would be what resources do they use in the land to protect themselves?
well, but not of the land though. Like what adaptations do their bodies have?
Oh, that's what
because
they're focused
yeah, because with like the isopods, we talked about how they roll up because that's to protect themselves. They have a hard shell from their predators, and then the predators thing just becomes a huge. They think that's really cool, like the food chain type thing.
Yeah.
So
on.
that was a big focus, which is I'm sure where we'll kind of get into with fish too.
Mhm.
Is that idea of the food chain and predators.
Trying to see. Yeah, that I have a feeling that I mean, it's fine to introduce it. I think that touches
Yeah.
up on a next grade level, because I was just looking through the clarification statements of what had to be taught. It doesn't have to, but if that's a passion area that gets them thinking about, which then you can kind of tie back into their environment. And that's at ES3-1, because like the clarification statement would be an example of how, kind of like that book,
Mm-hmm.
Deer eat buds and leaves, therefore they live in the forest area, and grass needs sunlight, so they often grow in meadows. So kind of talking about, so like water snails clean areas of the pond, so they would need to live in water.
Yeah.
Um,
I like that. I like the living things need water, air, and resources from the land, and they live in places that have those things. That's the one piece I think we haven't. Because what do things need? Like, they're very quick. I mean, that's like a day and a half lesson of like, what do living things need? They just get that really naturally and quickly.
Right.
So to kind of be exploring some of these other things, and then like that,
Mm-hmm.
they have to live there because that's where they get their needs.
Right.
So really focusing on that too, like what happens if I took this worm out of its environment and I put it in the desert? What's going to happen?
Right.
And maybe going a little bit more in that direction.
Yeah.
Is
And
that-
or what happens if we took these land snail or these water snails and released them back in the wild, but we put them in the forest?
Mm-hmm. Are they going to get the things that they need?
Yeah. So then, so it's just kind of like unpacking a little bit of what those standards mean. And then, not that you have to stick with the ones that were in the power standard, but I mean, obviously that's our power standard, but the science energy practices for each lesson, we can, kind of focus in and decide which one best fits that day's need.
Yeah, because if you look at, I don't know why this is not in the book, but it would be a great lesson. So I just added it. They want you to have the habitats ready to go before you give the kids.
Oh.
Like that's part of like you have it already.
You set them up and
Yes.
they just observe it and then stick
Yes.
the stuff in.
Yes. Well, I don't even know that they're supposed to stick the stuff in, to be honest.
Oh.
They just take the snails, you get them and have it already. We have been, what do you think? And maybe that's just a misunderstanding for how I've read through this, but we have been like brainstorming. What do you think we're going to need? What materials? And then, magically, we have all those materials ready to go, And so then, but we've been building it together. Then everyone does it together. Then we talk about more, and then they like record that in their science journals what they use to make the habitat. So, which is a huge part of like what the standard is like we have to. These are the things that they need. We have to be able to provide them for the animals that we have. So,
and I think too, it gives them ownership because if they come up with an object that wasn't in the kit, they can still bring it in.
Right, and that's what we talked about. Well, we don't have rocks, so we're gonna have to get some rocks from outside if we think that they need the rocks in there.
Yeah.
So that I've added in as a lesson, but then then it would be parts, and the third lesson is interesting for the worms because it's redworm behavior, so it's supposed to be like how do they move, but in reality, it's what do they need to live, which you've already kind of done after you make the worm jar. I mean, you set up the worm. Well, I guess this is when we start to make like the composting.
And you were going to up that so it happens sooner, right?
Well, if we use this layout, it would just happen sooner. Because this year we did isopods, snails, worms, goldfish. So we totally changed up.
And that's what you're doing this year.
That's what we're doing this year.
So
I'm
if
saying
we
if we did it next year,
you would do
goldfish.
Investigation 1 would be goldfish.
Yeah.
2 would be
worms.
Yeah.
Then isopods and snails. And then that way we would have the composting for a while. But it's just supposed to be like that redworm behavior is just a quick like how do they move, and then it's what do they need to live kind of again to make the worm jar.
Before you do the worm jar, we could probably get someone in from like the landfill or whatever. They usually have a compost person, or from the Cedar Rapids or whatever. We could put in parentheses. We could find a speaker on composting, and then the kids can take that to help them design theirs.
I think the people from Cedar Rapids that do, there's like an after school program that they do like cooking and stuff for kids. They do composting too. And I know those are like people my age that, I don't know what it's through, like if it's.
And I think there's a spot, it would either be through Cedar Rapids, or even I was thinking about the Marion landfill or something. They'd have some connections on
to the composting piece.
Yeah. So you can have someone present before they decide their plans or whatever.
And then the last one is the comparing the red worms to the night crawlers, which, well, I guess for this one we would still do.
With that one.
Mm-hmm.
Because you were going to start by comparing goldfish, guppies.
Compare the two worms, and then isopods and snails we wouldn't necessarily have to compare.
No, but then you can compare all four once you get to that point, right?
Yeah, and their needs and habitats. Right. Yeah. We've been doing a lot too, which I don't know that this is necessarily, I don't know, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we've been doing a lot of like their KWL chart, and we've been them asking their questions, and then we are coming back to that, and like today we found out which ones we answered and which ones do we still need to research, and then we did like this was awesome. Where did I put the card here? I just asked them, like, this was a spur of the moment thing.
Oh, so you changed your W to wonders.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then this board's going to change actually too, which I can, to be more of, to capture our vocab and whatnot. But after we did the no and the wonder, we did those in the same day, very beginning. Then I just said, well, how are we going to learn any of this type of information? And so their answer, I figured we were going to get like, watch a video, read a book, right?
Yeah.
No. Do some research.
Ooh, good job.
Ask people who know about worms.
Yes.
Well, that would be like a gardener. My grandma's a gardener. She likes to do that.
Awesome.
Okay, great.
There's a community partner.
Yep.
Good for your grandma.
We need to read some books. Well, they have to be nonfiction books. I'm literally just calling on them. I'm not asking anything. Ask Siri about worms.
Oh.
That's a way to obtain information.
That's right.
Look up stuff at home. Miss Becker, we should probably just look at some worms.
Yes, you should.
Yes, we should.
Little scientist, you.
Talk to our moms and dads.
Yeah.
This one's great. We've done this before. Watch videos. You know, like Sid the Science Kid. Yeah. Which he does actually have a really good video about worms and roly-polies.
So they'll be really excited when you bring that out.
Yep. Talk to a scientist. And go on a worm hunt.
Those are all amazing ideas.
So, right? I'm just like, you need more sticky notes. I'm like, yes, I do.
Oh, yeah, more.
So above the board, I'm going to put like, how can we learn? And I changed, so I wrote out a list this morning. I changed all of these to like phenomena so that we can come back to it like when we do goldfish next. So like observe phenomena. So what are we going to observe? We're going to observe the fish. Like, and then having some sort of icon so that when we connect our learning on the board, we can show how we obtain that information. So then they can start to see that, like, when we watch this video, we learned these facts. When we read this book, we learned this. When we talked to the guy about composting, we learned. And does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that they can start to see, like, that multiple.
This might be an option. What I did with the Creek staff is we put our wonders on cards. And so then as the kids got more information, we put cards underneath of them. So, like, when they did some research and answered one of those questions, we put a card. If they observed it and found more information, it was a new card. So every time they used different learning, they would write about what they learned and put it under their wonder. So that way they were seeing that it was coming from multiple sources. And that they were answering their own wonders.
So that's where I'm kind of like, I like having this, but I don't want to get away from like, and this is kind of what started the whole like, well, let's start integrating it back because we have to. But their questions, which I have the one from snails, their wonders were like, what do they eat? What do they look like?
Exactly.
Now it's like what are their questions was, do they have a foot? do they have feet? Because we learned with a snail,
Oh,
they have a
that
foot
one
that they call, yep. And so then they wanted to know. So then they like, do they have little hairs on them that we can't see? How long can they live? If we one time I cut a worm in half, can it still live? I mean, just like their questions this time, because we had done
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of like, it was anything they wanted to learn, you know? And I had said like, well, we haven't answered this question. So Miss Becker's just I'm gonna put it in my computer. We're gonna see what we can find. And we found these awesome worm videos and like or
Awesome.
snail videos, you know. So I don't want to get away, even though like that question doesn't tie to the standard or anything. I still want to do that part because I feel like
But it
that's
is,
how we cultivate.
because what you just said is they are starting to compare and contrast on their own without you.
Yeah,
Does it have a foot? Because I learned this has a foot.
yeah,
Does it have hairs? Because I know things have
Yeah.
hairs I can't see. So they're starting that compare and contrast
yeah.
without
That's
you
true.
having to.
That's
so
true.
you are still working toward that standard. And like you said, their engagement has led to deeper thinking. And
Absolutely. Because I was like, we're not going to get to half of those if I only do the investigations that are in here, you know. And
Right.
I would rather you cultivate this love of learning and researching about things and finding out. We can use many sources to do
Mhm.
that
yeah.
because that's what's going to get to meet the standards, not that I follow
And
these 3 lessons.
now that we've kind of dug in and pulled out the 3 pieces and you know exactly what they need to know, how they get there could be their path.
Yeah.
And like you said, so maybe next year I have to change the order and I added this already in because it works. You're still using the structure. Remember, that's a vessel to
Yeah.
get us there, and you're adding in the pieces that you need. So, no, as you can tell by your questions, the engagement level, and then the more excited they are about that, the easier it is to tie in all those other subject areas because
Yeah.
they want to read about
Yeah.
it, they want to write about
Yeah.
it, they want to. So, yeah.
What do you think for phenomena? I thought it would be really cool in this. I just thought it would be really cool to show them a composting bin and just get their questions about what they even think it is.
Mm-hmm.
Could there be an animal living in there? Just those sort of things to kind of
Mhm.
just like hook them.
And are you talking about for your worm lesson that's coming up, or are you talking about your overarching phenomena that everything's going to build back to?
Yeah. But that's where I'm like, can it?
Well, again, let's look back at our standard. So, the compost, all animals need food in order to live and grow.
Mm-hmm.
That would be in there.
Yep.
They
And
obtain their food from plants and from other animals.
which would be in there?
Plants need water and light to live and grow.
Mm.
The only thing is,
But do we
well,
have to fit that specific because we're going to get that through our trees and weather?
oh yeah.
So
Yep.
if we don't focus as much on that,
The only
and then that would fit into even that supporting standard of they can
Yep.
affect the world
living
around
things
them.
need air, need water, air, and resources. So the thing is, from the land, you're providing the resources.
Mm-hmm.
So that would just be one thing that we'll want to make sure that they can make that clear definition between is the compost is a man-made environment.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you could do it outside, but the ones we're having in our classroom are
Yeah.
man-made in here. That animals have these things that we're observing on their own environment. That's the only tricky part. That we'll just have to make a clear
Mm-hmm.
definition between.
Well, and then the idea is like, okay, is that only the phenomena for that worm section?
Well,
and
that's
then
what I was
there's a
wondering.
separate one for each, like with the fish, it would be separate then.
You'll want a lesson phenomena for each lesson. So one for the fish, one for the snail, one for the worm.
Okay, that's what we're referring
Right,
to as a lesson.
but then the overarching phenomena is what we learned from all 4 of these pieces help us solve that big one. So, kind of a phenomenon, I guess, tied to what plants and animals need to survive, or how they are in the environment they are due to that's what they need, kind of thing. It could be just as simple as taking them out here and what lives in this environment and why. So you could even give them an environment in their school ground and just talk about what animals do you think you live here and why can they survive? And we can go back. I mean, they can even observe it and see what's there, and then they could talk about, well, ants need this food, this structure. I mean, it could be something
So doing
like
that as the
The-
whole thing.
Because then once they learn what water ones need, what land ones need, they could tie it back to that.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying that's the best one. That's what's coming to head.
Mm-hmm.
Especially too, since we've already kind of started this one, and you might even think of a better one for next year as you get through this kit. But this one you could even start now, even though they've
Mm-hmm.
already started, and still come back to it.
Would you pose that question the entire time? Like what? Okay.
After every investigation, when they go back to answering some of these I wonders, do any of those I wonders help us know about our environment outside our window? What has that helped us learn, or what is something we want to go observe now that we've learned about this? Yeah, always kind of tying it back to how that can help us answer our main question.
So what animals can or what animals live here?
Yep, can or do, and why? What does this environment have that suits them, kind of?